It was a new low for the Boston College Eagles on Saturday as they were run out of Doak Campbell Stadium, 44-14 against the Florida State Seminoles. An ugly game in all three phases. It's definitely not something that we want to talk about, but we're going to have to because this is what we do. All this and more in today's Locked On BC.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On BC AJ Black. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Locked On BC here. AJ Black. Well, we saw it. We lived through it. It's time to talk about it. BC absolutely thrashed by Florida State on Saturday, 44-14, a game that was out of control within the first 5 minutes of the game, first play of the game. I mean, it started with a kickoff return touchdown and then just went downhill from there. And I'm joined by Mitch Wolf. Mitch, let's chat about this one. What happened?
Do we have to?
We have to. This is what I'm paid to do.
Yeah, I think I might need a raise. If it keeps going like this, we might need to talk about restructuring. Yeah, I mean, when Trey Benson, the Florida State running back, probably hit about the 40-yard line, I was like, okay, this is just going to be comically bad. And it was. I mean, with 6 minutes left in the first quarter, Florida State was up 21-0, and the game was all but over, with about 80% of it left to play, if not more. So, I mean, everything that could have went wrong pretty much did, especially in the first half. And, by the time BC kind of got a few things turned around, it was just too big of a mountain to climb.
Yeah, I mean, it was a mess. And as I kind of alluded to at the beginning, it was all three phases of the game. Like, you started off with a kick return touchdown. Jakovic throws an interception on his first drive, and then the defense couldn't stop anything. Let's get into some of your talking points, Mitch. What's the first thing you wanted to bring up?
So I think the first thing I want to say is I think Florida State is very good. I know they haven't really played, LSU is kind of, we're not really sure what they are yet. Louisville, we're still not really sure what they are. And BC obviously isn't very good, but even I think Florida State's offense is really playing well. I mean, I think Jordan Travis was awesome, playing, even though he was hurt, he didn't have any designed runs. And even without that, he absolutely just lit BC up from the pocket and occasionally on scrambles. Like, there was one play where Ezraku had Travis like in the pocket dead to rights, and somehow Travis turned that into like a 16-yard scramble. It was insane. But I mean, they were just like on the last touchdown in the first half, they kind of explained how BC was in this too high shell and they shifted coverage towards the big receiver, Johnny Wilson. And essentially they left the wider side of the field to Jaden Woodbay and whoever was in coverage of the receiver on the other side. And the other receiver, they said was their fourth or fifth option. And so, that's what if you're BC, you're like, okay, Jordan Travis, we're going to cover your main option. We're going to force you to throw a one-on-one matchup to the far side of the field to a receiver you don't have as much chemistry with. And if you make it, you make it. And he did. He threw an absolute dart to the end. It was a perfect throw to the end zone. Guy caught it. I think he mossed the defender. So that's kind of something that I talk about is the other team, especially Florida State, they're on scholarship too. They have good players too. And, throughout the game, I mean, Florida State's skill players were just bouncing BC defenders off them. Trey Benson had his kick return whenever he was running the ball. Even their receivers, like Micah Pittman, had a few of these where they would try to tackle him. Guys would just bounce off him. And it's just this team is just, they're on a different level from a physical standpoint. And that goes to size and strength and speed and athleticism. We'll get into the effort later, but I mean, there were just times where it was just so clear that Florida State had such a talent and skill advantage over BC.
And that, I mean, I'm sure BC fans don't want to hear this, but that's a credit to Norvell. He's done a nice job of putting that program back together, and bringing in athletes that fit what he wants to do. And as you mentioned, Jordan Travis was a big time example of that. Now, I want to talk about the offense for a minute here, Mitch. And it was I mean, if we wanted to sit down and talk about what was the worst outing, you could flip a coin between this and Virginia Tech, and either answer would be correct. It just Phil Dracovic. I don't know, like you feel for him for some sense because he's getting hit nonstop. And I thought the offensive line did a better job in this game. I know fans don't want to hear that, but even the Pro Football Focus grades for the offensive line, which will be up on Sunday evening, dictate that they did play better in pass pro. But the cumulative effect of getting slammed for 3 straight games, I'm sure probably still weighs on Dracovic. I mean, he just did not look comfortable back there. He's not making the passes that he used to make. I mean, you mentioned it on Twitter. There was that long pass that he missed a wide open Zay Flowers by 4 yards. It felt like, it's just, is his confidence just gone? It seems like his confidence is just gone.
So I'm not sure it's gone. And the reason why I say that is because kind of in the second half when he started playing a little better, and I think part of that was, Florida State maybe, playing simpler defenses, not being as aggressive. But you saw Phil kind of like just play a little looser. He started kind of, trying to scramble out of the pocket. I thought he made some nice plays. And then kind of reflecting on the first few drives, like he just looked so tight. Like when he just looked like his whole body was like tensed and locked up. And I think that's where you see him struggle in the quick game because he's so tense in those moments that he has those bad throws. And, that's what led to the 2 interceptions to Zay on very short throws. Even the first play of the game for BC after the kick return, he throws a ball. And I think on that incompletion to Zay, or where he was running a short crossing route, I was surprised they didn't call holding on the defense because they were pretty much interfering with Zay like right as the ball was being thrown. So that was surprising. And then similar play on 3rd down. I think there was some pressure, and that was the first interception where he put the ball behind Zay, and that's what caused it to intercept. And that's something Phil has really struggled with in general, is putting balls behind receivers and not allowing them to maximize yak or putting the ball at risk. But again, like I'm not sure his confidence. I think he just gets too juiced up early in games and is like, I need to be the guy. And especially now where he's like, this offensive line is bad. Like I need to like be the hero and do all these and like do everything right. Make the perfect read, make the perfect play. And I think in the second half, he might've just been like, all right, like, this game is basically over. Like, let's just try to go out there and, just try to put something together. And I think that's how he played a good bit for the last 2 years. And obviously, sometimes that got him in trouble, but I think you need to kind of, somebody needs to get in his head and be like, hey, like, listen, man, you got to chill out. You just, just go out there and try to make a play. And I think part of that was them saying, hey, we don't want you to scramble as much because we don't want you getting hurt. So, don't go outside the pocket as much. And, he kind of internalized that for the first few weeks, but I'm hoping now they're like, listen, like, man, like, we're backs against the wall here. We're at rock bottom. We're going to let you be you come what may. And, we're sorry if that gets you hurt. But it seems like that's like Phil wants to play that more reckless style. And I think he knows what comes with that territory. So I'll be interested to see how this team looks moving forward on that front, at least.
Yeah, I miss the plays. You don't see him as much, and it might be just the McNulty versus Signetti differences here, where Dracovic was best in 2020 when he would roll out, and
I would say
that would got him hurt, but
they're doing a lot of that. They are doing a lot of rollouts, and like even I think the touchdown that they had, Phil's I guess his only touchdown, where that was a really nice play design where you had the tight end kind of leak out as the first slider, and the defense went with that, but then they also had Broom kind of follow him underneath. And that's almost like, if you watch the Chiefs a lot, they do this a lot in the low red zone, where they'll kind of leak a very obvious receiver out and then kind of throw a shovel pass behind it, and that is usually wide open. And this wasn't obviously a shovel pass, but it was kind of a similar concept, which it worked well, and I was very interested. That was kind of an interesting play to break down.
All right. In a moment, we're going to talk about the defense and the big issue leading into this game. After this game, effort and tackling. It just seemed like a big issue. We'll get into that in just a moment. Now, these days, every new, having a bit of an issue here. Every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. that all you need to do is head on over to LinkedIn Jobs and add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. Locked On BC, AJ Black here. And watching this game was obviously it was frustrating on a bunch of different levels. And if you're listening to this right now on YouTube, hit the comment section with what you thought. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this game as well. And we'll be posting them on the screen. So hit the comment section if you have thoughts about this game. But I think one of the most concerning and really frightening things about the outcome of this game was the tackling. And watching it, you saw just so many plays, and I know Mitch talked about it in the first segment about the athleticism of Florida State and how fast and physical those guys were. But it just felt like BC was just either not interested in really making tackles. It seemed like there were a lot of arm tackles there, or they just couldn't get guys to the ground. And the stat that really stood out to me is when I went on profootballfocus.com. This has been a hellacious year for the Eagles, and there's been some really bad performances in different areas of different parts of the game. The BC had their worst grade in one area for this game, and that was tackling, and they scored a 35, which is well below anything that I've seen for the Eagles this year in anything, including most of their offensive line grades. So that really shows like just how bad it was. Mitch, talk to me. What did you notice?
So this goes back to my point. I think a lot about Florida State, that Florida State's physical advantage over BC, because like I said, like a lot of times you saw like guys would approach the ball carrier like with pretty decent technique and like the proper form, and they would just bounce off the Florida State player. Like Benson, like that Trey Benson running back, like I was saying to you, like I think that dude needs to hit the transfer portal and go someplace where he can be the primary starter, because he is crazy. Like he's obviously, like they said, he's like the fastest player on the team, but he's also 215 pounds and can just run through tacklers like no problem. The other thing is like when in this kind of game, when you're a player who's like trying your hardest to just run to the ball, and that's where you're putting all your effort just to get there. I'm not saying like this is almost, it's kind of a double-edged sword in that when you arrive at the ball carrier, like it's just gonna be hard to stop your momentum, and then a good ball carrier can use that against you. So I think you saw that a good bit. I mean, and essentially, like if you're just in, like there was the time where Jordan Travis, when he had that scramble, like he made Ezeraku miss in the backfield. I think he made a defensive tackle miss in the backfield, and then once he got in the open field, he just set up Benny DePalma well, made him miss, made Elijah Jones miss. So some of these just came on one play where it was just one guy having a crazy run. But I mean, the biggest surprise we have like for the tackling is Jason Maitre, who got credited with 4 missed tackles. And Maitre is, despite his size, is usually a very sure tackler. So you saw him get embarrassed a good bit in this game. But like I said, I really don't chalk this up to lack of effort, because I think people just want to say that because it's kind of an easy crutch to, then you can just kind of rag on them without doing any actual critical analysis. But I mean, if you look at how this game developed, like obviously, Florida State takes this 24-point lead. BC punts back, and then the next few drives, so they turn Florida State over on, and Florida State wasn't kicking field goals because they don't trust their kicker, but I digress. But they turned Florida State over on downs in 2 consecutive drives. I know they got them to 4th down on a drive earlier. So, and a lot of these 4th downs, like they came down to like making a tackle in the hole and like saying like, we need to stop you like right here, right now. And, I know Vinny DePalma had a big tackle like he did against Maine, and plays like that indicate to me like this team is not losing for lack of effort. Like they were trying, and like, I know Florida State had some nice plays later in the game, but like they forced some punts, they weren't out there just lollygagging. I think they really were trying hard to win this game. I think, you look at some of the post-game comments from the players, like, I think this team does have a lot of pride. And I think that this game was definitely a wound to that pride. And I think they know like, hey, like, we were not the we were. I think they knew coming in that they were going to have a talent disadvantage, and when you have that, you need to kind of play the perfect game, make no mistakes. But because all the mistakes got compounded so early, it put them in a terrible position. And I think you even look at the offense same way. Like when guys would get tackled, like the rest of them, like guys would run right over and help each other up. Like if you're in that position and like the guys are just like letting each other kind of every man for himself, that's the bad thing. But I think you saw this team, like guys were, you know, going to each other. I think, Hasselbeck talked about it. He's like, this is a situation where you learn about a lot about your team because, there's really no hope that there's going to be a win, but, you really learn about the guy next to you. You learn who, I think Hasselbeck said, who's paddling the oar, in rhythm, who's not, who's pointing fingers and who's being quiet and just going back to work. And I honestly think that even though the result is really bad, I think you saw BC show a lot of heart in a game in a game that really just got out of hand quickly, but they still said, all right, we've got a game to play, so we're going to go out and do our job as best we can.
I think that's the hard part too, right? Like,
yeah, that's exactly. Like, this is like when if you're in like high school and you like take a test and you're like, well, if I don't study and I get like a bad grade, then it's like, oh, that's cool, I didn't study. Whereas if you study and you get a bad grade, you're like, oh, I wasted all this time and I still got a bad grade. And that's kind of what happened. Like BC had all this effort and it still didn't matter. And I think fans don't want to admit that. They just want to say, oh, the team doesn't care, they don't want to play. I think they did, and I think they just got outclassed. They got outclassed by talent and outcoached, and sometimes that just happens. And I'm not trying to like excuse the performance. Like it was bad, and like obviously like there were play issues early in the game. Like I said, like this is another game where a special teams mistake really came back to bite them. Jerkovic had those bad plays. I'm not saying like they're totally excusable. Like Phil's got to be better. Like he's got to, not make those key interceptions that, put the team down super early. The defense has got to be smarter in terms of, how you're attacking with your angles. Like, how are you breaking down? How are you approaching a ball carrier? But I think just saying it's a lack of effort or, oh, this team clearly didn't practice all week, I think that's just lazy. And I don't think that's, it doesn't really inspire. I don't think it's worth having a conversation about then. And I also just don't think it's accurate. So there's really no point in saying that.
You're going to get some angry BC fans at you later, Mitch. I hope you're ready for it.
Well, they think they're the main character in the story already, so I don't really care.
All right. We'll get into that in just a moment. But I want to also talk about Hafley, and I want to talk about the state of this program right now. And, where do they go from here in just a moment? We'll get into that after this break. Locked on BC, AJ Black here, joined as always by Mitch Wolf, and we are discussing the Saturday's game against Florida State. An ugly loss for BC, one of the worst ones I've seen in a while. But if you're enjoying this, what I'm going to ask you to do is hit that subscribe button for Locked on BC. Make sure that you get notifications of all of our new videos as they come out. We'll be doing these. I do these every day. And we'd love to have you there. Join the comment section, become a subscriber. It's free, doesn't hurt, and helps the podcast. All right. So we're talking BC fans here, and they're rightfully very angry. And, they're just like every other college football fan. And I think that's a credit to BC that there's fans out there that are passionate enough to get as angry as Texas A&M fans or Miami fans who are going absolutely nuclear after losing.
I was just going to say, be glad that there isn't a nuclear reactor on campus in Chestnut Hill, because we've seen fans who threaten to detonate it if there's a bad loss.
Yep. So now we're at 1-3, and you've got some scary games ahead of you. I mean, the call for blood for some of the fan base is already there. They're out, I'm getting DM'd like, are you going to write about firing Hafley and blah, blah, blah. And I'll be the first to admit the shine on him is gone, and it's now time to put up or shut up, right? Like you're on to year 3 now, and this is a disappointing year. You got to figure things out, and the season is lost, but it's not completely lost. That they can still figure out a way to kind of turn it around, show progress, maybe pull a win off or two, and try to get some things going. I mean, Mitch, where does BC go from here?
I mean, I don't think they're going to fire Hafley, and I don't think they should. And my first reason why is that when people say they want people fired, they're typically like, that will somehow solve everything. And you're losing a head coach, so you have to promote somebody to be the interim head coach. And I believe one of the few people on the staff with head coaching experience at the college level or above is Rob Chudzinski, who has NFL head coaching experience. I don't think Tem Luku has been a head coach. I don't think John McNulty's been one. And I can't remember any of the specific assistants off the top of my head who might have it as well. So it's like, okay, you want to fire him. That's great. Who do you want to promote? And, if you're a fan who's frustrated with the offensive performance, you probably want to see like, well, why would we promote the offensive guy? And if you're frustrated with the defensive performance, well, why would we promote the defensive guy? So I think that firing him, one, it creates more problems than it solves. And this isn't like the NFL where you can like kind of fire people and then like, all right, like we'll tank and then we'll get a better draft pick. Like if you fire somebody in the middle of the season, that's going to go worse for you because you're going to lose recruits and that's going to be a stay on the program. And you could argue that keeping a bad coach is a stay on the program as well. But I'm still not convinced Hafley is a bad coach. Some people almost would agree with what I meant to say or what I thought I was going to say. But I think this is definitely a crossroads moment for Hafley. And I think that, some people that after the, sting of the loss kind of wore off, they're like, like maybe we had overinflated expectations this season. A lot of stuff just kind of didn't go Hafley's way. And I kind of played this out in a comment on the board where I was kind of thinking like, I wonder if almost the extra COVID year kind of messed up how BC was going to handle the offensive line. Cause, guys like Ben Petrula, and I guess, you could argue Zion, but he was obviously very good. And you could kind of argue Alec Lindstrom as well. They stay this extra year and that kind of pushes all the development down a road. So, and I'm wondering like if some of them had left or even if Tyler Vrabel, who again, wasn't the best player, but I mean, he's still in the NFL practice squad and he's been better than Jack Conley and Nick Thomas. I wonder if instead of having this complete overhaul of the offensive line, injuries aside, obviously, you have a more gradual succession from kind of those late era Adazio guys to the early Hafley era guys, where you work them in one by like two at a time or one at a time instead of four at a time, or now 5 at a time with Mahogany being out. And obviously then there's the injury compound. And I think people are kind of calming down after those transfer portal comments where I think Hafley did explore the transfer portal. And I think that sometimes you just come up empty. Like I said, BC has a lot of limiting factors when it comes to the portal and especially linemen. Just saying there's like 300 some linemen in the portal doesn't mean that they're all, possible. I think you would call them takes for BC, guys they can't just like bring onto the roster. So, and I think if he could do it again, they'd probably try a different strategy. And I think that this is, again, he is a first time head coach, so there are going to be mistakes. So I think, he says, okay, like maybe we need to adjust our portal strategy because we have needs to fill.
Yep.
So, I think this kind of reminds me of, and I tweeted this out, of the infamous Adazio, it'll come together and it'll be a beautiful game after getting beat at home by Virginia Tech. And, BC reeled off a few wins after that, even though Anthony Brown got hurt. And, it obviously didn't save Adazio. I don't think it was even the low moment for his tenure because you could argue it was obviously the 2015 Wake Forest game. But I think at the time, the administration rightfully gave him a pass for that year because of all the injuries. Obviously, like and the defense was good. But in the last few years, he kind of had that moment after the Virginia Tech game where they changed some things and they reel off some wins. And I'm kind of wondering if this is going to be a similar moment where this is kind of the rock bottom for the Hafley tenure so far.
Yeah, I mean, and he's going to have plenty of opportunities to kind of show that they're going in the right direction and trending forward. And it's tough to watch because to watch a team that you expected to have the speed to kind of match up with Florida State go out there and not be able to do that. I understand that they're not the athletes that you expect, but when Hafley preaches that he's getting speed and doesn't show it on the field, that's a little bit worrisome. But, I think the fan base, it's deja vu again for a lot of them. And you look at other coaches around the country in some programs that BC might want to, replicate what they're doing. And each of these coaches, I feel like, have had moments like this where they've fallen apart. And I'll give you just a couple that I off the top of my head. Dave Clawson at Wake Forest. Mm-hmm. I think they were pretty, middling for a while. And Dino Babers. I mean, Dino Babers 2 years ago looked like a dead man walking.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was shocked when he was brought back, and they
He's gonna be
obviously
5-0 after this week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they got freaking Wagner.
Yeah, and he's got some quality wins in there
And
too.
I think Syracuse is ranked. If not, they're
Yep.
very close. I'm looking it up now. They're not
25.
ranked. They're okay. They're
Right on the right.
in the
Depends on what
coaches
poll
poll.
you're looking at.
Yeah, in the
but
coaches poll. In the AP poll, they have 22 votes.
but
Yeah.
But if the fan base had their way, Babers would have been gone, and you wouldn't have had they wouldn't have had that type of season. Now, Hafley's a different coach than him, but it's fair to say that, like, if you believed in him, you saw some of those things at different times, which we did see in 2020, not so much in 2021, even though they stuck around in games they had no business sticking around in when they had, Dennis Grosel out there. Things have hit the fan this year. I think him having the time to figure that out and to see, like, he's not going to get fired, and, giving him the chance to see the end of this year, next year, is this a pattern, or is this a something that he's stuck in? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of where he's at.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. And, I don't want to keep dealing hypotheticals because, at the end of the day, the head coach of a college program, like, you need to figure out answers when, things go awry in both, like, kind of in the micro and macro sense. But, if you think about last year, like, let's say, like, Phil doesn't get hurt and, they, they turn some of those close losses into wins. They go to Syracuse, they win that game. Maybe we'll and, like, let's say he doesn't get hurt, so, like, he's still healthy for the Florida State and Wake games, and they probably lose to Wake still, but and especially because the team, like, the whole team was sick, but, like, it'd be interesting, like, if Phil had stayed healthy and had a big season last year, and, like, let's say, like, Phil leaves Phil and Zay both leave after last year, they have good seasons, and then you're kind of doing a whole rebuilding project, not just on the offensive line.
Right.
And then this is a tough year, and but I think then the expectations are just so much lower, and I think people just kind of I think we were victim to this too, just kind of mismanaging expectations, and then the offensive line I think was worse beyond our wildest dreams, but again I think, like you said, the shine is worn off. I don't think Hafley is on the hot seat yet, even given BC's reticence to make rash decisions. Like, I don't think they'd ever really fire a coach in season unless he, like, committed a crime or something, or had major NCAA violations. Even then, we've seen coaches survive that. But I don't think he's going to be fired this year, even though there are rumors about Leahy retiring, and there is a new AD who didn't hire him. But I think he'll get the rest of this year. I think he'll get next year to, see if he can kind of turn it around, with a kind of a really, I mean, that's what is that? Is that year 4? So that's, like, pretty much all his guys. So, I think that's fair to give him, a full cycle of recruiting. And then, if next year it's a lot of the same problems, if, they haven't really developed a quarterback behind Dracovic in the meantime, and it's all the same issues, then maybe after next year, like, all right, we need to go in a different direction.
I mean, you talked about it, Mitch, like the transfer portal, like, and, like, being able to he needs to be able to, one of the things he needs to grow on is being able to look at his roster and say, yeah, I want to stay true to my guys, but if I don't have an answer there, then I need to go to the portal. So Emmett Moorhead would be a perfect example of that, right? Mm-hmm. So next year, if Dracovic leaves, because technically, folks, he has another year left if he wants it, and I don't see him getting drafted. I don't know about you.
Yeah, not at this point. It's pretty rough outlook for him now.
Right. And he could stay around and figure out it, probably get his stock back up. But if Moorhead's the guy and he's not ready, then that's on Hafley that he needs to go to the portal and figure that out. Because if Moorhead's going to go out there and struggle, and I am not reading into anything that he did last night, because that was against the second and third team defenses for Florida State, against a very vanilla defense that wasn't blitzing all that much. And, he was okay. But
yeah,
whatever.
I mean, you saw like Xavier Coleman led the team in rushing for the night, and it all came on that final drive where they were playing light boxes, and he just ran up the middle. And, like, you're in a normal game script, you're not going to see Xavier Coleman rip 8-yard gains consistently against a defense, especially if they're stacking the box. And I mean, what was Moorhead was like 3 for 6, I believe. I think he took a sack as well. So, and he had the touchdown, but, like, he had some of the same issues that Dracovic has. Like, he sailed 2 easy passes. I think one was to the flat to the running back, one was over the middle. So, like, and it's at the end of the game when like if like I know we kind of brought it up. Other people obviously brought up of putting him in the game earlier. I think that's a really tough position to put him in. On the road against if you put him in earlier, it's a sellout crowd that is really in the game. Obviously it matters to get players good reps in games, but it also matters that you give them good reps that they can actually are meaningful towards the development. And I think Hafley rightfully interprets the situation as putting him in earlier or not, it's not going to be quality reps for him to learn anything. So I'm not really reading into it. I think Moorhead has a lot of the same issues that Jurkovec has. He's a big arm dude that can move a little bit, but struggles with the little things. So I don't think we're going to see Moorhead in a extended capacity this year, honestly.
And before folks call us Hafley apologists, which I'm sure we're going to hear about, we're not. We're telling you that we're still concerned about the future of this program. We're concerned about where he's at. We're just thinking realistically where they're going. And for the folks as well, I see this a lot, that they're like, yeah, Hafley's locked in for 5 years. I'd like to repeat again for like the 8th time how extensions work for college football. They mean nothing. Okay. Mm-hmm. All that matters is the buyout money. So the years do not matter. If it's what the money is compared to the years, Hafley is not locked in for 5 more years. Okay. So don't use that as a barometer of what BC's doing, or it's a bad contract. It's a recruiting tool. That's all it was. Okay. Mm-hmm. I see it all the time and I'm like, this is maddening. You don't understand what you're talking about. So just another piece with that. So it's the buyout money. If there's a big buyout, then yeah, I could see BC balking at that, but I'm guessing the way BC works that they're going to put the buyout at something manageable.
Yeah. And I mean, like if it goes badly next year, I'm sure that there'll be a donor that is like, all right, I'll pony up the money to pay the buyout. That's how it always happens at other schools. And I can't imagine it'd be different here.
Yep. So just think about that, and we'll continue to go down and talk about what's going on and everything in between. But we have to wrap this up because I'm supposed to not do shows longer than 30 minutes, Mitch, or I get yelled at. So we have to wrap this up. Mitch, where can people find you?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolf, WOLFE on Twitter.
All right, and you can follow him at Eagle Insider. Are you going to watch the game again?
Yeah. I think there'll be some interesting things to take out of this. I think it also, I'll just watch it once, be like, hey, Florida State's pretty fun to watch now.
Yeah, it's good. They got a big matchup this weekend against Wake Forest.
They've got a tough, or wait, that might have been Syracuse I was looking at, but actually no, I was talking about this last night. They've got a rough schedule. So they got versus Wake, at NC State, versus Clemson the next 3 weeks. So I think we're really going to find out. Is this Florida State team for real by the end of October?
All right, and this is AJ Black. Thank you all for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page. It really does help make a difference for our site. And we will be back again tomorrow. I will be talking more about this game, looking at some of the ins and outs of what we saw and anything else that we need to talk about. And of course, we're going to start talking some basketball to lighten the mood a little bit because I think we all need it. For AJ Black and Mitch Wolf, take care, everyone.